teenagers were very enthusiastic about later start times. Some had reservations about the sports schedules, and some worried that teenagers would abuse the later start times by using them as an excuse to stay up later, which I have to say is not borne out by the research.
Right.
Again, that was something where there was an initial spike in maybe the first couple of months, but as they got used to the schedule, they went back to their regular
The
bedtimes.
melatonin levels.
Right. So there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. We need to hold public forums, even just to educate the public about the research regarding teenage sleep needs, to get public input, the general public at large. We should consult with our district's athletic director. It might be in our interest to consult with the other athletic directors in the Cape Ann League. You know, who knows, maybe we could spearhead a movement to get the entire Cape Ann League to change their schedules to move forward. I don't know. It's worth looking into. It's probably, don't know if that would happen or not, but it's worth looking into. And finally, it might be a good idea to send surveys out to parents, students, and the staff, who are also going to have to get here either earlier or later, depending on which school they work at, and get their thoughts on the school start time issues. So, there's never going to be 100% agreement on the given start time for any school. You're always going to have a range of people for whom it is convenient or not convenient, or, difficult or less difficult. The school educational and health benefits for the students of North Reading has to be this committee's first priority, but we cannot discount the community response to any changes we make.
As the other school committee member who was on the committee, I was basically charged with trying to find negatives. Well, I said I'll take that on to changing the start times to later for the high school, and there really aren't any. It's all positive in terms of the kids being more awake and alert, especially earlier in the day. What none of the studies have shown yet, however, is that there is educational improvement. There's more
Right.
more alert students in class. They aren't falling asleep in their 7:15 or whatever time the first class starts. It really hasn't been done long enough to assess the educational benefits. But I do think there were no negatives in terms of, well, this is a bad thing because I couldn't find any of that. Also was surprised to find out, and probably should have known this, that there is a school in the Cape Ann League, Linfield, whose high
Yeah.
school starts at I think 8 o'clock or 7:55 each day. They start the same time as their middle school. They use the same buses.
Right.
And there are some issues with athletic schedules, but when that happens, the few kids that are involved get dismissed early the last period, and they go out and they take their bus to whatever athletic event they have to. Beverly High School, I believe, also has a later start. North Andover, I think, has a later start. I think this is something, I know how hard it is. Of course, I'm an old guy, but I know how hard it is for me to get up early in the morning to go to work. And most of us don't have to be to work for 7 o'clock. It's pretty early in the day.
Right.
I think if there's any way, and obviously it's not going to be for this school year, or it could be for next school year, but if we could look at trying to adjust our times to get a later start time for the high school, I think I'd be in support of that. Get the kids.
It would be nice if we could get the middle schoolers too, because, puberty starts hitting them at the
I think
tail
right
end.
now the middle school starts at what, 7:52?
7:55.
And I think Linfield starts both at 8 o'clock.
Any research on interrupted sleep, like you get to school at the same time, but then have a nap period instead of a where they can take a nap?
I'm
The
sure
nap would be good.
This is not a joke. I was wondering, because my daughter gets home, and she's not the first. I think all three of them would get home, take a nap.
Right.
And I don't know if having the 9 1/4 hours broken up is effective, or if the work that an adolescent brain is doing requires the 9 1/4 hours of deep sleep just to sort stuff out. I don't know the answer to that question. I also found myself wondering about all the sports teams that get up at ungodly hours.
To
get
practice.
Practice time.
Swimming,
Here, there, and
hockey.
everywhere.
Right. Swimming and hockey, I think, are the two prime examples
And
of
I
that.
found myself thinking that, if we had, say, 9 o'clock starting time, teams could do practices in the morning, and those kids would still be getting up early, but only during that season. Now, I don't know what impact that would have. It wouldn't seem to me that it would have any net change on those students, but would be beneficial to those who were not on those teams. My inclination is that, on the basis of the research, I would prefer to see the time switched around and figure out how to make it work. But it's not something that should be decided in a vacuum, because it's something that should be very clearly advertised well in advance. It's going to impact all kinds of other youth activities in town, and to spring it on them at the last moment just wouldn't be right to the kids or to the activities. And I think forums is a reasonable way of getting information out. I really think we should also be looking at the MIAA and making some overtures to the legislature to look at these issues. Because this,
Yeah.
No, no napping.
Rebecca?
I would, I'd be in support of moving the high school up by 15 minutes, because, from what the studies say, 15 minutes with teenagers does
Yeah,
make a difference.
Any amount of time, that was one of the things we looked at, is
Right.
how much time
It-
would they need?
I spoke with the school committee member from Linfield, and Dorothy told me that they found it made a difference at Linfield High School, moving the kids up and putting them on the middle school bus. They aligned them with their middle school
Right.
schedule, and I think, if we want to test something like that, it doesn't impact the elementary or the middle school. We can see if we get a positive reaction out of high school additional time. So I think that would be worth starting, moving the high school.
But you might as well do it
15
25
minutes.
minutes, then, if you're gonna do it the same as the middle school.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, that's what I mean.
But-
Yeah, I'm saying a
but
minimum of
it
15
isn't-
minutes.
It isn't that simple. You've got your hours staggered so that the kids at the high school, the secondary schools, are done before the buses are needed to
Right.
pick kids up in the afternoon.
Yes, well, that's what I was gonna
And-
move with, Nicole's study says that, there's the option of putting middle school and high schoolers on the same bus line, and our middle school and high school are in close proximity, so.
Can't fit them though. All of those buses in the
extra
middle
buses.
school.
We need more buses.
You need more buses.
You would, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yes.
Um,
The other issue, and we started talking, the administrative council started talking about the calendar for next year and the start times, and just the issue of, the release time at the high school you want sufficient time between the high school release and when the batch is getting out, so that there's, really
Traffic
avoid the
issue.
traffic issue, yeah. Another issue is because we're sharing staff, I know this isn't student-centered, but it's also a practical issue from a budget. We are sharing staff, so how that aligns between high school and middle, and high school or middle and elementary is critical. Or has to be considered, isn't critical, but it has to be considered. And when you're looking at those times when you do want, let's say, all teachers at a particular grade to get together, if you have a huge separation between when your early elementary school, let's say if you put an elementary school starting at 7:45 with the idea of high school starting and the middle school starting later, you'd separate the early elementary and the late elementary. So there's a desire to try to keep that early and late elementary school concept, whether it's late or whether it's early, but at least to have them contiguous with one another.
From what the woman in Linfield said, the 15 minutes bump up on the high school did not impact the athletic teams playing. And she pointed out that the real concern with getting to the games is mostly a fall sport, because they're outside and it gets
It's a sun.
dark earlier.
Right.
large difference.
Yeah, I think their high school did start a little bit later than ours already, and then they moved to 8 o'clock, right?
But they've adjusted, and I think North Andover, within the league, they've adjusted the start times.
Right.
Uh,
I think there's a lot of good reasons to at least look at the high school kids getting another 15 minutes. And even though there would be some complications with working schedules.
It'd be 25 though, if we can move in the same as the middle school. And one of the issues, Steve's suggestion of flipping, I think the only areas where they've done that is where it was a big self-contained school district. In other words, so all of their sports teams were in that district, everything was in
Right.
that
Yeah,
district. So-
Minneapolis
Right, and so
did
by
that.
flipping them over,
Or if we could get Fayetteville and Minneapolis on our schedule.
right, then right, but, so there were fewer issues because everybody,
I
You know what I mean,
understand,
within a
I
sports
understand,
league or
and
within
that's
was doing
why
it.
you try to talk to other people too.
right,
but-
exactly.
But if some of the issues that we're talking about though, actually kind of take care of themselves. The work issues, people are being asked to work at times when high school kids might be asked to shop or what have you. That will adjust itself. The programs, the activities around town that people are involved in, those will be adjusted. The
Right.
schedules can be adjusted as long as people have time to digest what's coming. The sports schedules actually are already extremely demanding in some areas. And if a student is getting up in the middle of the morning, 3 or 4 in the morning to go to a hockey rink or whatever, this isn't gonna be a solution for that. But I really think you can get away if you have to dismiss a group of athletes early to get to an away game or something. Is it disruptive? Yes, a little bit. Does it happen that often? No. Only half of the schedule's on the road. And I think I don't think the league is going to be indifferent and refuse to try to accommodate. I'm sure that they would make reasonable accommodations. I just think it's something that if we felt that this was what was in the best interest of the students, then it should be a question of moving it forward and getting people to assist in helping to figure out how to make it work.
I agree.
The biggest issue for me in doing this was the mental and emotional health benefits to the students. I mean, it's so hard.
Depression is
The
a huge
teenagers
issue.
are so hard. And that was one of the results. I mean, the grades don't go up that much, not by a really appreciable margin, but the self-reported incidence of depression goes down when these schedules are adjusted, when students are getting enough sleep. They're less likely to become depressed, and it's just a whole different, depressed and not depressed is a whole different way of looking at life.
Yep.
And yeah, it's so hard already to be a teenager. Why make it more difficult? Because it's convenient. That's kind of what gets me is, it's all of these issues with the sports and the busing and it all comes down to what's convenient.
Well, it's also
Not-
it's also a cost issue. It's
And,
not
and
just what's
cost,
convenient.
convenience and cost, yes.
Right.
But none of it is, we start at this time because it's the best time for the students to be at school.
No, and it
None of
never
that
has
is,
been.
that's never the reason.
Right.
And I think when I was at Penn Tech, the school was dismissed at 3:05 in the afternoon. It was both the middle school and the high school. It was just one combined school, so it was common busing and all.
Like
The
that
school was
sports-
dismissed at
sports
3:05,
activity.
and the sports
Yeah.
program started after that.
Yeah, the sports back then were, no. I went to school at 7:16. I guess my question is this, how do we basically remand this to the policy committee and then have them make a recommendation as to what steps we take? Do we, as a committee, because I do see benefits in having some level of later start time. I don't think there's a unanimous